well, that's the thing is that that is ridiculous, or so we think, provided they do eventually find the plane. Now, I mean, I was watching probably the same thing you watched, but there was a thing on Netflix or something the other day about that, and there's a guy there, I forget his name, Richard something, very clever bloke, and he's analysed some radio wave lines that go around the Earth. Very, very difficult to understand,
Wow.
but he says I'm 99.9% sure if they follow what I'm saying now, I can lead them right to the plane where exactly where it is. And at the same time, excuse me, at the same time, it was saying on the program that the Malaysian government and possibly the Chinese, I can't remember, and the Australian, because they've all been involved in the search,
Yeah.
they're thinking of starting a new search and they'll decide by June. Now that struck me as really odd, really, because although they've had lots of searches, and it is a massive area to search, of course, but
Yeah.
I find it a bit odd, given that they found confirmed pieces of the wing
Yeah.
um, that they haven't, they've done computer tests to see where that wing, how it went across the ocean and so on. I think it was found on Reunion Island off
Right.
of Madagascar, but they still haven't found it. And the fact that this very clever bloke, and there's others as well, has said he's pretty confident he knows where this now will be. Um, and he's so confident that he says if they search, they'll find it. But the governments there, they seem reluctant to do it, which only leads to people thinking, well, it probably is some sort of a cover up. I mean, I think a lot of the thinking is that the plane was shot down,
Right.
possibly by America. I read a book on this aircraft thing a couple of years ago by a French woman,
Right.
and she analysed the whole thing. It's a very good book. And at the end of it all, her conclusion was she thought probably it was shot down by the Americans. I don't know quite why, whether there was someone on the plane they didn't want or whatever. But that seemed to be a conclusion. But then that program the other day seemed to say that the captain, he may well have committed suicide and taken a whole load of people with him. So you
Wow.
will never know. But if they don't find the plane,
Yeah.
I think that probably simply means it's going to be covered up forevermore.
Wow. There's a lot of things like that in the world. I mean, there's one that's closer to home, and that's the is it the Loch Ness Monster? The one in Scotland.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a conspiracy.
What do you think that is?
It's
I actually think he exists. I
you
think,
do.
well, I do. I do. Call me crazy, but I might as well wear a tinfoil hat now.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously different creatures in these places, but
Yeah.
it obviously is good for the economics of the area, isn't it? They don't ever want it solved because then, the Loch Ness monster is something that everybody knows about.
Yeah.
And if it was if I owned that Loch Ness, I wouldn't want anyone to say, "Oh, I found out what it is. It's just a normal one, but much bigger," or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it suits them to keep it as a mystery, doesn't it?
Well, I would, yeah, if it makes money. If it brings tourism and all that to the area, I would as well. Uh,
But I'm not overly impressed with you bringing up the MH370, given that in 1 week's time I'm flying on an aeroplane to New York. So just when I'm getting myself calm about, well, I don't mind flying, but yeah, I hope we don't disappear.
you know, I, I can't, I don't like flying, I don't like it.
No, you don't
No, I don't. I'd avoid it if I could. I don't know.
really.
I don't feel comfortable flying. Yeah, it's
You
just,
do fly though sometimes, do you?
yeah, I do, unfortunately, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
takes a lot of courage that. But unless it's up,
yeah.
unless it's absolutely essential,
You
I'd
don't do it.
rather not. Yeah, it's just, and I'll tell you one thing I'd never go on, a helicopter. I'd
No,
not go on a
no,
helicopter. Would you?
no. I wouldn't. I mean,
No.
it's statistically, it's more dangerous to go in a helicopter. And again, statistically,
Yeah.
we're told, and I'm sure it's true, flying is the safest place to be. There's more danger driving to the airport on the roads than actually being in an aeroplane. And when you think, I think it's something like 10 million people a day fly in aeroplanes. And at any one time, there's millions flying around the globe. And it is quite incredible that flying has achieved such a good safety record, because it sort of, I mean, I don't really like it. I do it because I don't want to not travel, but
Yeah.
I'm not a great fan of it. It gets a bit boring and so on. But yeah, I think it's amazing. It goes against every instinct, every human instinct. We're not meant to fly,
Not
sort of thing.
designed to fly, are we?
Um,
No.
so yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but there is an exhilaration to it. I think that it's also very clever, and it's also an exact science. I mean, they know precisely what the wings of a plane will lift and the angles and so on.
Right.
And let's face it. I mean, a few years ago now, um, my then wife and I, we took in trainee air stewardesses.
Right.
They came to us probably for 1 month or 2 months for 6 or 7 week courses, and they were flying pretty quickly with the airline at the time, and it was just, for most of them, it was just so routine. Um, and I actually lived with an air stewardess 3 or 4 years ago. She lived with me for about a year, and she was lovely. And that's another story. But she went off three or
Right.
four times a week, and she said, "See you later," and all that. We gave each other a kiss, and off she went. And it never occurred to me that she wouldn't come back, and nor to her. And I think when you see, air crew, flight crew, and cabin crew, they're so relaxed and nonchalant about it. It's it. I don't think there's any great need for people to be frightened. One of the worst things, I suppose, is turbulence.
Yeah.
I've experienced that a few times, and if it's bad turbulence, it's not dangerous, but it can be very uncomfortable for a while. But
Yeah.
generally, they try to fly above the weather, so to speak. So shouldn't normally be a problem. But again, we talked about distraction,
Yeah.
and I think cabin crew are very good at distracting passengers because they know there are quite a few nervous people.
Yeah.
And one example, a few years ago when we were flying to America. I think we were going to Florida. I can't quite remember, but on a Virgin 747, and yeah, it was all going fine and everything. And I suppose halfway there, it's about a 9 or 10 hour flight. Um, I think I was watching a film on the screen, but they suddenly announced over the intercom that they were going to do a competition for all the passengers. I think there were over 400 passengers on the plane,
Right.
and they said, "Well, there's 24 crew on this plane, which is a heck of a lot. I mean, there were two
Oh, that's
pilots
a lot.
plus two pilots plus on a long route they take a third one as well, and senior stewards and junior stewardesses, all the rest of it. And I think altogether it was 24 people. I mean, just as a statistic again, the average distance cabin crew walk on a transatlantic flight is about 15 miles. It sounds